Happy Thursday, folks. Welcome back to Cape Ann. Today we have some fun interviews with lots of laughs to share with you, including right off the top, Heather and I reach out again to Yoichi Udagawa and Fran White. And Yoichi is, of course, the conductor for Cape Ann Symphony, and Fran is hosting an outdoor concert at her home in August. It's the Symphony's first live show of 2020. Oh, and she also has the latest on COVID testing. Check it out.
We realize that it's going to be very difficult to perform likely into sometime in 21, if not all the way through 21 to 22. So understanding that, we tried to look at options that would give us the opportunity to, number one, have our musicians get an opportunity to play, and number two, and importantly, give our patrons an opportunity to see some live music. So we decided to be creative and try to look at outdoor venues that might work. And I see that a lot of people are looking at outdoor venues, and we made the decision that the most likely option, after looking at a few things, would to do it at my home, which likely I have enough space in my yard to accommodate maximum of 70 people with social distancing and with the musicians in social distancing from the audience as well, and decided that it was a worthwhile thing to do so that to bring music back to Cape Ann.
So my immediate questions are rehearsals and social distancing, and how does a symphony play? Can you play 6 feet apart, and are you masked, and how is all that working?
Well, I mean, that's a very good question. The thing is, first of all, we're only going to have 21 members of the orchestra. So if we were to have the full complement of 50, 60, there's no way to social distance. I think that it will be about 4 feet apart, Fran, is that right?
Yeah.
What are the rules for that as we get into the
outside? I think 4 feet is acceptable. I mean, nobody sort of defines really outside for the musicians, but yeah.
And
we should be able to have 4 to 5 feet, and people sitting in the audience, we should be able to have 6 feet between people who come together. So we'll have 2 chairs and then distance, and or if 4 people buy tickets, we'll likely have 4 chairs and then some distance.
I like how we're testing Yoichi's peripheral vision, though, with everybody spread out that way. That's a lot to conduct.
It is, yeah. Well, the musicians will be in a location together, so they will also be. We'll allow them. I'm going to let Yoichi arrange for their seating.
Yeah, one of the rehearsals is going to be at Fran's house inside, but she's got a huge room. And I just want to add that Fran and her husband David have been really generous in kind of opening up their home to allow us to do this, and so we're all very grateful. And then the second rehearsal will be outside. And so, you know, that was an interesting question, Heather, because we did check around to see if there were any other facilities that would let us rehearse. And right now, I think people are feeling very hesitant to do that. So we ended up doing all our services at Fran's house. And I know that going forward, this will be a huge challenge for all the arts organizations, not only in Cape Ann, but around the world.
Well, do you feel obliged to have the musicians in rehearsals be masked? Will you be masked?
Yeah, we're planning to do that. The only people that can't be masked are the woodwind players, like the flute player and the oboe, because they need to have access.
Yeah.
And I've never conducted with a mask. I'm sure none of the musicians have ever, played with a mask. But we got to learn. We got to learn and adapt, and it'll be an interesting experience. I know that we're all very excited to have an opportunity to do our craft, because it's been a very tough time. It's been a tough time for everyone, I'm sure. But for people like performing musicians, artists who want to do that, you're just practicing it at home. It's not the same. So this is a real joy for us.
So do you
For
want to
sure.
describe the program that night?
Sure. So we're going to do 3 pieces. The program will be in total about an hour long, so we're probably going to do it without an intermission. And we're starting off with a piece by William Grant Still. He's known as the Dean of the African American composers. He's really one of the first composers of color who have works performed by major symphony orchestras. There are other well-known African American composers, but he's probably amongst the most well-known. And he wrote a gorgeous piece for strings, strings only, called Mother and Child, and it was based on an artwork by a Boston-based artist who did a figure of a mother and child, and he wanted to set that to music. And he wrote it originally for a violin and piano, I believe, but he made an arrangement for string orchestra. And we are eager to play this. I've never done it, and so that's what's going to start us off. It's a reflective piece, and I thought it would be appropriate for the times we live in. And then the second piece is by Richard Wagner. And this was a request from our bass player, who's principal bass player. And it's actually a perfect piece for the setting because it requires a smaller group. And I mentioned earlier that we were only going to have 21 musicians. So we couldn't do anything like a Beethoven symphony or something like that, which we would have loved to have done, especially since this is the 200th anniversary of his birth, and then 250th of his birth. And then let's see, what was it? And we're going to end by with a piece by Mozart, his symphony number 29. He was 18 years old when he wrote it, but it's very very youthful and optimistic and energetic, and I think it's, you know, we need some positivity in our lives right now. So I thought it was a perfect thing to end the concert with. So that will be our program, and I think it'll be a lot of fun for the audience, and I know for us musicians it's going to be a blast. I hate to be selfish, but.
And so, Fran, what can patrons expect that night? Like parking situation, should they be masked, et cetera, et cetera?
We have written a lot of informative emails and will continue to our patrons. We will have people to help with parking. I live on the corner of Hesperus Ave, and we've had events at our house before, and people can park up and down Hesperus Ave. We can fit a certain number of cars in our yard, and then after that, I also have some neighbors who have very generously said we could put cars in their yards as well. So we'll help people with parking. There will be no tickets. It will all be paperless. We will have a list of people when they arrive that they have purchased a ticket. We will take their temperature according to CDC guidelines, because we really want to be 100% sure we're offering a safe environment for our patrons. They will be asked to wear masks. Masks will be mandatory, and they will be asked to keep their masks on for the majority of the concert. We will be serving some light refreshments, and they will be served individually wrapped, and those will be served as people arrive, since we will not be having an intermission, but it will be a light refreshment. Unfortunately, we're also going to have to tell people not to congregate very much and not to congregate in large groups, just to be sure we are following all state and local regulations specific to COVID. So I think we've taken every precaution we can to provide a safe environment for our patrons. The numbers are very small, so we're really hoping that we will sell this concert out. I think we will. More than 50% of the tickets have already been sold. So people who want tickets really need to get tickets as quickly as they can. And the seating will be outside in the yard, sort of scattered. Because that's the only way we can put 70 people. So it'll be a little bit scattered, seats here and there and around the pool and in different locations. But yeah, it should be, we should be able to provide a safe environment for our patrons. And I think that has been one of our big pushes, to make sure that this concert is providing an outlet for music, but providing a safe environment.
Well, if Heather bought the last tickets, I might be in a neighbor's tree with a 6-pack.
Morning.
Fran, can you give us some sort of update on the on your other job here now?
My COVID job?
Yeah.
The great news is COVID is very low in the Northeast. So Massachusetts has done a very good job of controlling COVID. In Massachusetts, we're seeing very low numbers. Usually it's under 200 new cases a day, which still we think sounds high, but it's very low. We're still testing a lot of people. I think the last I looked, we was still doing between 7,000 and 8,000 tests per day. And one of the metrics that we need to look at is that what is the positivity rate at the height of the infection and the pandemic. In Massachusetts, we had close to a 20% positivity rate. We're down to about 1.7. So it's under 2%, and it has been under 2% for over a month now. And on Cape Ann, we've really been lucky. I haven't looked this week, but there's only been 3 new cases, and I think that's in like 2 weeks. And those 3 cases are in Gloucester. So and Gloucester's still under. When last I looked at Gloucester, it was at 260, and they had gone from 257 to 260 in probably about 3 weeks. So in our area, we're very lucky. I think we're in a bubble, and it's always the concern because the rest of the country outside the Northeast is not doing well. High numbers in Florida, high numbers in Texas. California is shutting things down again. So we are in a bubble right now, and I think that's another good thing. We want to take advantage of this because nobody knows if that's going to last. Everybody's worried that just the way we followed this virus, that bubble could break and we could see numbers start to increase in Massachusetts again.
So, in terms of your work at MDC Associates, where you are, we talked to you a few months ago, and you were working on a number of companies that were trying to develop tests. How's that going? Tests for COVID?
Many more tests, and many more what would be easier tests. I think people are looking now at rapid tests that can be done at home or in a point of care environment where we can screen large populations. So there are several companies who will work on tests that will give somewhere 15 minutes to an hour result that will be very, very inexpensive. So we can put them in universities. We can send people home with them, and they can do testing on a regular basis at home. And that's going to make a big difference because we can monitor and we can continue to monitor the disease much more closely if we have better access to easier rapid tests. Most of the tests cleared up till now for FDA use, authorized tests, because they're not really cleared. The FDA calls them authorized through this process. Most of the tests authorized for use right now are tests that have to be performed in highly complex labs, which means somebody's got to send it to a lab with minimal numbers that are being done at point of care. So this is going to be a changing environment where we have more and more point of care tests.
There had been one more question on this. There had been an issue with false negatives, right? With initial testing. Is that getting resolved, do you think?
It is to an extent. There were some false negatives. It was mostly with the single rapid test that was out there. And I mean, I can say who it was because it was publicly discussed. It was Abbott Diagnostics. And the FDA has worked with Abbott to try to resolve that. They think it mostly was associated with sample collection. So the false negative numbers are going down. Anybody who gets a negative test really is recommended if they show any symptoms or think they've been in touch with in contact with somebody who has COVID, they should be retested. And so, that's why we see so many tests being done. Some people are being retested on a regular basis. That would be the advantage of a home test, because we could say to people, okay, you can buy this instrument, or you can get this instrument from your employer or from your university and test on some kind of regular basis. And that would give us a much better handle on this disease. And I think one of the things we've said is control is going to be the best option we have until we have a vaccine, which is probably still at least a year away.
Yoichi, getting back to the August 16th event, can you express your excitement and the musicians' excitement just to get back performing again?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's we live to do it. We live to. I have to say, there's kind of an adrenaline rush when you when you get together in a rehearsal. First of all, just in the rehearsal, I always still get nervous. Is not quite the word, but just a little bit. The pulse quickens, and that's a good thing. And I think it's true for all the musicians too. I mean, when we get together, there's an element of when you first start, you want to make mistakes, you want to be on the top of your game, and especially after being away from it for so long. I know everybody's going to be a little bit they're going to be excited, and I feel the same way. And it'll be so great to work on music with other people, and to be able to share it with an audience. That's another thing. Even before concerts, I've done this hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, but you still get nervous a little bit. You get excited. And as soon as you start a concert, you go on tuning and you go out, people clap and you get started. It's just so much fun, I have to tell you. And at the point of a concert, all the rehearsals been done, all the work has been done. Whatever happens, and you just let it go, and it's a thrill. And I've said this many times, but when you're conducting, you're right in the middle of the music. All the musicians are around you, and the sound is coming at you. It's stereo is not. The stereo has nothing on live music. It's more than quadriphonic. It's coming from all over, and there's a physicality to it. The musicians are getting into it, and it's a joy. It's a joy. So I can't wait. I can't wait. And when I hear that we might not be able to perform this fall, it's just so, this is going to be a tremendous. We're all looking forward to it, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity. I want to say thank you again to Fran and her husband David for opening up their home, and thank the people who support us, and we're just really looking forward to it.
That's great.
Well, I will be there that night, and I am so looking forward to the whole experience, to
hear
live music again, to hear the Cape Ann Symphony and this program. I'm really excited. So thank you, Fran, and thank you, Yoichi.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Heather.
I'll drag Corey in. Corey's going to be my date that night.
I'll go there. I'm right there. Yeah, I'm just a walk from my parents' house. So that's easy.
Yeah, you're right close by, Corey. Yeah.
It'd be great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So it's been a while since I've seen the symphony. So, this could turn into a whole little barbecue circuit for you. You could just go yard to yard. Yeah.
I think the other thing is it's going to be very intimate compared to performing in a hall. I mean, I have a good sized yard, but it isn't that big. So while we will keep social distance, it will be an intimate experience to be close to the musicians, and I think it will be a very different experience.
I like the idea of sitting by your pool. I'm really kind of liking that idea.
There's no choice. It's sort of in the middle.
Heather can be in a floaty. Yeah.
I was trying to think about buying some floaties to decorate. Have a few animals floating in the pool.
These future lawns. Very Mozart style, right?
Yeah.
Well, we're looking forward to August 16th, and it's great catching up with you too. The vibe's a little different from the last time we spoke, so
it's very different.
Yeah, so spirits are much higher.
We really are excited about this. So.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate your time, and let's do this again sooner than later.
Okay.
Great. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Take care. I really like the idea of hearing the symphony from a floaty in a pool, right?
Yeah.
We might be starting something brand new here in Cape Ann.
Yeah, and you talk about lucky neighbors. They get to hear Cape Ann Symphony, tune up in advance to the August 16th concert. So that's pretty awesome. So
Right.
good for Magnolia and good on Fran too for doing that. And encouraging news about the COVID testing, which I thought was pretty cool as well. Who knew when we set up those interviews with the symphony in March that Fran had this MDC that she had just left. Well, that she's still connected to, but pretty amazing.
Yeah. And we do have that interview around where we follow up and interview her and the president of MDC Associates early on when they were beginning to work with all these companies on creating new COVID testing. So that exists. That interview, right?
Yep. So now let's turn our attention to Henry Ferrini. He is part of the Gloucester Writers Center over there in East Main Street, talking about their upcoming programming, including a big event, their annual event, surrounding Charles Olsen.
Great.
So if you could just start talking about the mission of the Gloucester Writers Center.
Well, I should have really written. I'm not prepared for this verbatim. I should have it verbatim, but the mission is really a mission of inclusivity to allow all voices to be heard. It was founded in Vincent Ferrini's house, who was considered the conscience of Gloucester by many. And so we try to preserve that engagement that Vincent had with his community. Yeah.
Could you describe Gloucester around that time when the Gloucester Writers Center was being formed and Vincent Ferrini was, writing poetry, and what was the culture like then?
Well, poetry's been a part of the history of Gloucester since both Charles Olsen and Vincent came here and used the city as material for much of their work. The Writers Center started in 2010, and Vincent wrote over 30 volumes of poetry in the place, and I didn't particularly want to see it torn down and become a couple of spaces for cars, or a nail parlor or a dog grooming parlor. Don't get me wrong, I love dogs. Mine should be here somewhere, but he's probably in the lake over there. But hope that doesn't screw up your editing, but I love this thing because it's a camera.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're not looking at the same offices that Heather and I have been looking at for the last 3 months either. It's beautiful out there.
Anyhow, so he sort of consecrated that space with poetry, and when anybody comes into that, many writers, not anybody, but when many writers come into that place, they feel that there's a vibe there. It's an intimate spot. It lends itself to contemplation and writing. So that's what we wanted to preserve. Vincent died in 2007. This was 2010 when Paul Sawyer called and said, "Henry, I have pancreatic cancer. I've got like a few more weeks to live. There's two things I want to make happen before I die, and that one is to finish this book that he's writing," that he did, and the other one was to make sure that the nonprofit for writing. And he laid that on me, and then he called Annie, and then he laid that on her. And we had we could not say no to our friend whose dying wish was to make this thing happen. So we did it, and that was in April. And by May, we had raised like $90,000 to purchase the place. That's life, and that happened that way. And if Paul hadn't done that, there would probably be online, I'd raised enough money to put Vincent's books online, digitally. So, yeah.
What kind of programming has come out of the Gloucester Writers Center in the past 10 years?
I mean, we've had this Charles Olsen lecture every year in collaboration with Cape Ann Museum. And we've brought scholars from Japan and from England to speak there, and France and all over the world. We've had, you know, a few years ago, Michael McClure just passed away a month ago. He read at Mary Baraka read at CAM. You know, that's one program. We, on the other side of that, we've had writers groups meet there who are trying to get their first book out and create a community for writers to work together to try to get over that hump. We've had myriad classes on different things. We've had Linda Robinson did a 10-minute playwriting class where they wrote their play and then performed it. Many iterations of that, you know, probably dozens and dozens of plays that came out of that class. It's been really very, very successful, given our small footprint. You know, we have 700 feet over there. So
I have so many questions, but I want to ask Henry a really important one. I want you to talk about my favorite Gloucester Writers Center project, which is the Maud Olson Library.
Yeah, that is a wonderful jewel in Gloucester that few people know about. But right now it is housed at 108 East Main Street. It has this magnificent view overlooking Gloucester Harbor from, you know, from Lady of Good Voyage Church to City Hall and then down into the outer harbor. We have 5,500 of the books that Charles Olsen read, talked about, or reviewed. So, and those books are special in that the scholar, this guy Ralph Maude, who was his graduate student at Buffalo in the 60s, he went, it's a facsimile library. And so Ralph researched all of these books back, he went to University of Connecticut, got the original books, bought a facsimile copy, went through each of Olsen's original books, underlined everything Olsen underlined or notated any of his marginalia, copied each one of those 5,500 books, put a nameplate in it, and then wrote a couple of sort of laid some breadcrumbs down there for future scholars who may be interested in why Olsen was interested in this book. So it's a magnificent, it's a work of art as well as it is a library, because it sort of deals with this man, the inside of Greg Gibson, who I traveled out there to get the library, you know, calls it Olsen's brain. And he says, you know, if you were stuck in a library and you had to read all these books, would you turn into Charles Olsen? You know, well, I don't know if that would happen, but it's a fun thing to think about. And that is what the library offers a lot of, you know. Olsen was a historian as well as a poet. So there's a very deep, you know, grouping of historical books in there, and his thought processes were all over the place. He was interested in lots of different things. So, you know, there's a beautiful book on mushrooms in there, as well as, you know, 17th century Gloucester history, as well as an amazing amount of zines from the 60s, all of Ed Sanders' magazine, his magazine for the arts, all sorts of stuff.
I sort of see that Maud Olson Library as a story of obsession. There's Charles Olsen, kind of obsessed with Gloucester. There's Ralph Maude, obsessed with Charles Olsen's inner workings of his mind. And then there are you guys who drove out, or you flew out to Vancouver, yeah, and drove that library back to Gloucester.
Yeah.
And installed it here.
that's a great characterization. Sure. I mean, otherwise, people aren't obsessed about stuff that just gets destroyed and turns into dust. And so,
Well,
yeah,
Henry,
we're happy that.
I was gonna say, let's talk about some of the upcoming programs you have at the Writers Center, and like it's honestly how you've had to adjust throughout the pandemic, the programming there on East Main Street.
Yeah. Well, the programs, we've been able to adjust because we have Zoom.
Yeah.
Zoom. So all of our stuff is on it. And, where programming we've been able to do programming because of this, program. None of us can meet. So the stuff we have upcoming, actually Tuesday, we have a world-class, who's actually our writer in residence here, has been for a month. His name is Peter Allman. Peter is a journalist, a screenwriter, and a filmmaker. And he's giving a class on script writing. It's Tuesday at 7 o'clock, and there's still some seats left. So if people hear this, if this goes out by then, go to the website and check it out. Because it's a Zoom meeting, it'll be open to about 10 people, and we still have a couple seats left. So that's happening. We have another class with Kelly Jean Fitzsimmons, who is a writer in New York, who gives classes for people who are interested in storytelling. And because we have a fishtail strand, and so many people have circled through that maybe if there's an interest in honing your story, working with Kelly Jean would be a great way of doing that. That's coming up. Tom Daly is a wonderful poet in Boston who is giving a class on conflict in writing. And those are the three things we're working on now. We are working on this upcoming, we do this Charles Olsen lecture in October, and we're trying to figure out how that's going to turn into a Zoom event. We want it to be open internationally, so we're working on that. There's all of the writers who, generally when in the past we brought people into Vincent's house to read when we know it's going to be a small group, and then we would use a Rocky Neck for a larger group. Well, we can't do that anymore, and also the stage company for stuff. Well, so that's off that, so it's back into Zoom. Yeah. And I won't do that again.
Well, and you said something before we started recording, Henry, where it's actually easier to access some of the bigger names now because of the Zoom culture.
Right, and because of that, we're going to be doing this piece with Mark Kurlansky. He stays in New York. He has a great connection to Gloucester. We'll do an interview and figure out like you're doing here and get it out there. The big issue for a nonprofit, how do you monetize that stuff? So we're trying to figure out how to do that. With all the different people, but along with Kurlansky, we have an upcoming event interview with Jennifer Finney Boylan, who is one of our board members, MJ Boylan's cousin, who is a columnist in the New York Times. So we're going to be talking about her new book. On the site now, we have this amazing interview with Jesse Wegman, who just wrote, who was on the editorial staff of the New York Times, who wrote a book on the Electoral College and the need to get rid of the Electoral College. So, and down the line, it's just who, we have a lot of friends out there, and it's just, getting 40 minutes to talk to them and put something together. So we're going to be doing a lot more of that. We'll probably be doing a lot more classes. Fishtails is virtual already. We've had one, and we've been lucky enough to figure out how to monetize that, and that was really helpful because usually that's a big payday for the Gloucester Writers Center, and doing it virtually, we doubled the audience. People weren't paying as much at the door, but we got a lot more viewership, and that was immensely helpful.
So Henry, for those who don't know much about the Writers Center, what do you want them to know, and how can people actually help out and participate?
Well, we're always looking for volunteers. We like to be able to keep that library open. We keep it open by people volunteering to spend a few hours over there. It's a small library, so 2 people can be socially distant in there without a problem. And it's right now in the summertime, it's wonderful because there's this beautiful deck overlooking Gloucester Harbor. So that's one great way. And just check out if people are interested in classes. I think all of our classes are certainly up to, if anyone's done Grub Street classes, which now are all virtual as well, the quality of it is right up there. I was telling Peter Almond is a very deep thinker and writer and communicator, and this is going to be a great class on the screenplay that it's going to be doing 4 classes. So check out the website. It's all there, and there's all great interesting programming that we've done over the last 10 years that's on that site.
So, and everyone heard me exclaim about the Maud Olson Library. I cannot tell people strongly and earnestly enough how cool I think that story is. It's a story of obsession. Not a lot of people know about it. And it's pretty cool. I think there should be a national story written about the Maud Olson Library.
Pretty amazing. And 3,000 miles or so from Vancouver to Gloucester. So
yeah. And then these guys who, Henry Ferrini and Greg Gibson, who travel across the country to get the library and bring it back. And here it is. Now it's in Gloucester, and you can walk into Charles Olson's head and see all the books he ever thought about.
Pretty cool. Well, I hope you liked today's show. Tomorrow we have Mike Cronin of the Gloucester Daily Times and Erica Brown of the Manchester Cricket. Until then, have a great Thursday.